G'day. How are we? Earlier today I was given a briefing on the changes in the protocols with respect to importing US beef. Unfortunately, that has raised more questions than provided answers. It has raised my suspicion about the speed and timing of this decision, a decision that apparently was one that has been taken over a long period of time, yet the government has not provided or released the protocols on which the beef from the United States could be imported into this country. Those are the legal requirements that an importer would have to meet to bring beef from the United States into Australia that was from Mexico or Canada. The fact that they haven't done that raises serious concerns to me around how this decision has been made and the timing of it. If it was well planned, the department would be able to provide me with those details. They have not. And I think the prudent way forward is to have an independent scientific panel review the department's decision and the protocols when they come out. There is a precedent for this, and in fact that precedent was one that I put in place when I was Agriculture Minister around the importing of prawns back into Australia after the white spot outbreak. I think it would be prudent for this government to have an independent panel that industry could hand select the scientific rigour that is required and the personnel to be on that panel to review the decision. We need to give confidence to the Australian public, not just to the agricultural sector. We are not just talking about animal welfare. We are talking about Australians' welfare. This is about BSE, this is about TB, and we should not be taking risks that cannot be substantiated. And the fact that the government cannot substantiate those protocols today concerns me. It should concern every Australian, and biosecurity should not be political. But the fact that we are sitting here today without those protocols put in front of us to give us that confidence erodes that confidence. And so I just say to the government that they should commit to an independent scientific panel being formed to review their decision so that we do have that confidence moving forward. Kevin, you want to say something?
Just to follow up from what David said, biosecurity in this country has always been science-based, and as he said, it's not political. What we have a real concern about is the timing of this and the rushness of this. There's a lot of stakeholders, important, industry bodies who were giving no heads up about this until very late yesterday. The department seems to be slow with, again, explaining what these new protocols are or if they know how these new protocols will work. And we're talking about Australians' health and safety here. Also, the damage that biosecurity, as we know, and why we're so cautious about it and precautionary about it, would be the damage that would be done to an industry if we had an outbreak of a disease come into our country for the industry as well. But also, as we've said, for the health of Australian humans as well that can be damaged by some of these outbreaks. I'm also concerned, I'm hearing a little bit of backstories about this. I hope this isn't Ambassador Rudd. Obviously, the government is scrambling to try and get a meeting with Trump because of their own mismanagement and a lack of focus on this early on in Trump's presidency. And we certainly hope that there isn't, Ambassador Rudd or others aren't running around the US trading away some of our biosecurity issues in the context of trying to get a deal done with Trump. We are not encouraged, and we would not encourage the government to trade around biosecurity risk to get a deal or get anything done with Trump. That is paramount and should never be compromised. So there's a lot of questions about this, and a lot of questions the government has to answer that they aren't answering yet. The briefing they gave to the stakeholders today was very highbrow, very into the weeds of this, because we don't think they know what they are.
The two of the big farming lobby groups, the National Farmers Federation and Cattle Australia, have both spoken today. They don't seem too concerned about this. Why are you so concerned?
Well,
do you know that they don't?
I take a deep breath on that. I've had subsequent conversations with Cattle Australia after they were provided a briefing as well. And they also share concerns, and they'll be making a statement. I'll allow them to make those statements. And when Kevin talks about trading away biosecurity, we're also concerned about other commodities that may be potentially traded away over in the United States, like pork, and we need assurances from the government that this is the extent of it. But first and foremost, we should take the precautionary principle here. This is Australians' well-being, Australians' families' well-being, about understanding what is being brought into this country. This is talking about BSE, TB. That is something this country doesn't have and don't want to get. And unless you can provide that confidence, that is the government's responsibility, provide that confidence. And when they give a briefing to industry and they give a briefing to the Shadow Minister and cannot provide the protocols on which is the legal basis you can import that beef into this country, and this has been a long-standing process, why can't they provide that? That adds suspicion to what has happened here, and it shouldn't be like that. And this is the contempt that the Albanese government has shown agriculture, but there is a real risk to Australian families if we get this wrong. Yep, I'll come around. Yep.
This has come from scientists and experts within the department. Why don't you trust them?
Well, they won't provide. They won't be transparent, and they won't provide the protocols on which the scientific basis of their decision has been made, and would give us the mitigants to protect the Australian industry and Australian consumers. So what we said, and as a precedent that I undertook as Agriculture Minister, if you wanted to make sure that you could provide that certainty, and in prawns we couldn't, and I backed the industry to have an independent scientific panel formed to actually review that science that gave me that advice for that decision. That's a sensible thing to do. But when you see that this decision has been made and yet none of the details are put out, it raises suspicion. And it raises suspicion because of the fact that Anthony Albanese is trying to get a meeting with Donald Trump and trying to trade away our commodities potentially for a deal on iron ore or aluminium worth $400 million. The cattle exports to the United States are worth $4 billion. So I just want to make sure that we've got this right. It is beholden on the government to be able to provide that information, and they should be transparent up front with that. They're going to make such a monumental announcement to the industry and to this country. Wouldn't you thought good governance would have meant that you provided those scientific reasonings and protocols that show that scientific rigour has taken place? They haven't been able to do that. We understand it potentially could be sometime next week that they rely that. That says to me that the department's scrambling to catch up to a political decision made in Washington.
The department did publish a draft report last month for consultation, and then they published another report with the stakeholder responses. So doesn't that count to your argument that this is not done?
No, there's a difference between a draft report and a final report, because there are protocols that are put in place within that draft report. If you want to read that draft report, there are protocols that were put in that. The report that is placed out here doesn't go into any further detail around the arrangements and the legally binding application of importing meat into this country. Now, why wouldn't you, if you're going to make this announcement, give full details of the final report, all the protocols, and in the briefing that I received, they couldn't provide me with those details on simple questions about where and how long cattle needed to be in feeder arrangements in the United States before they went to the slaughterhouse. They had none of those details to hand, which shows to me that unfortunately the department's been put in a situation of trying to catch up to a decision that was made in Washington.
So just to understand, is there now no assurance that the government or department could issue you that would make you not need that independent review?
Well, we'd want to see the protocols on which they...
But if they did that, would you then not necessarily require...
Well, I think there's now enough suspicion that I think it'd be prudent. When you are talking about human health, you're not just talking about the health of our national herd. We are talking about families' well-being in this country, that we can give them confidence that things like TB and BSE will not come to this country. That is a government's responsibility. If you are going to take your responsibilities seriously, and you have had a long-standing process that has gone well beyond 5 years, and yet in that moment of announcement, you cannot provide the details, it says to me that there is a reasonable amount of doubt in my mind that you could trust the fact that this was a decision that the department was prepared to make, but one that they were forced to make in an untimely manner that they were not ready for.
Do you really think the government and the public servants involved in this issue would put Australians' health at risk for a trade deal? It's a serious thing to say.
Well, what I want to do is give certainty, and they shouldn't have to get to this point. Biosecurity should be above this, and it has been. But I just pose the question. A long-standing process, well beyond 5 years. You get to the announcement, you've had a draft report with certain protocols that were initiated or discussed in that report, but yet cannot provide those details now on the day of the announcement. Something's not right. And what you want to do is provide confidence to the Australian people. And you can do that by having an independent panel review the science. And that goes to the precautionary principle. When you're talking about BSE, TB, what's wrong with having peer review science of the department's decision to make sure that they have got the right protocols, that they have made the right scientific decision? This is a serious situation, and the fact that the government has mismanaged the announcement of this without providing that confidence, that is onus of responsibility on our government to give you that confidence. And if they haven't done that, then I think it raises enough suspicion that an independent panel should come forward that is handpicked by industry, that is predicated on scientific background.
Just how much is the risk going to increase, though? The imports from the US are practically zero. It's surrounding it. So are you expecting a flood of American beef into Australia? How much is the risk actually going to rise?
Well, it only takes one piece that's infected to cause serious damage, not just to the industry, but to you. So with all due respect, this should be predicated on science, and it should be clearly articulated to the Australian people. So yes, there's not a lot of beef coming in from the United States at the moment, and their prices are significantly high because their herd's down. But that will change, and we've already allowed US beef that's born and bred in the United States, but we are talking about a supply chain that goes beyond the United States. So this is not something to take chance with.
Is that really unique, though, from other supply chains when it comes to the level of risk? If it's that vastly different to things coming out of Europe or elsewhere?
Well, it depends on the country and the incursions in which they have and the supply chains that they have. So we've proven over the past where we've been pragmatic with the United States. If it's born and bred, then there were risk assessments undertaken that would give confidence to allow them to come in. But once you have a supply chain that goes beyond that and opens up greater risks, like Mexico and Canada, then you actually have to ask those serious questions. I'll come back there.
That the US doesn't have lifetime traceability. The Minister said this morning that the US supply chain and the Australian supply chain are equivalent. That was her words. Do you think that's an accurate assessment by the Ag Minister?
Well, I couldn't get that assurance in my briefing. All I got was their similarities, and I couldn't get a clear understanding. I was given an assurance that I'd get further information. The information that was subsequently sent to me was a lot of documents that talked about the Mexican supply chain, everything else bar the protocols and the equivalency of the traceability. And again, this is an erosion of confidence by the government. And this is what raises suspicion. We shouldn't be standing here having this conversation. We should not. The government should have been able to provide all details to give the confidence of that scientific decision. The fact they haven't raises enough concern that I think an independent panel should be appointed and should review this.
Mr. LittleProud, who are you actually representing here? Because the National Farmers Federation says the Australian government has assured the industry they've undertaken a standard science-based review to protect Australia's biosecurity. So you're at odds with the National Farmers Federation.
Well, with all due respect, I don't represent the National Farmers Federation. I don't know what
farmers.
Yeah, so do I. And I don't know what briefing they've had, but you weren't here before. But I think you'll find that some of the peak bodies have been subsequently briefed to the extent I have, that they also have concerns. And the fact that we haven't seen the detail is raising a lot of concerns. But with all due respect, I don't need to be in concert with the NFF. I'll represent them predicated on the decision, the experience that I have as a former agriculture minister and as someone that represents regional Australia. I don't intend to have to toe the line with the NFF. I'll do my own thinking.
Does the government's decision actually risk tarring Australia's entire meat and livestock industry? Given the risk of contamination, do you think it will actually, increase the risk of our exports being knocked back by other partners?
Well, no, this is why leadership's required. We need to get that confidence now. It should have been provided. The fact it hasn't has eroded only here in Australia and raised suspicion about the timing and the speed of this decision. And that's why I think it's prudent to give the confidence to the industry and to consumers here with an independent panel scientifically reviewing this decision. And if the department and the government is confident in that decision they've made, they have nothing to fear, absolutely zero to fear. But the fact that they have mismanaged this, mishandled it, and obviously the timing of this and the speed in which they've done this, despite a long process, but can't provide the details, raises a lot of questions that I think every Australian wants answered.
Can I ask on net zero?
Hold on, I'll keep going on. Any last questions on this before we get to our favourite subject? And I've got to go to question time.
You and your party have made it clear that the US is one of our closest allies. Why can't we trust them to not have their own protocols in place to make sure infected beef isn't being exported, not just to Australia, but any other country that they export beef to?
Well, we do. So we allow US beef into this country at the moment if they are born and bred in the United States. The issue is their supply chain takes from other countries that we don't have confidence in. And so as they put arrangements on us for the import of our beef, for our local conditions and environmental conditions, we do that for the United States as we do for Japan, as we do for Korea, any other country. So it is unique to the individual country. We have faith in being able to take born and bred cattle, but for countries where their supply chain extends beyond that has greater issues, the traceability is the issue. And this is where we need to make sure that we can have traceability from the paddock to your plate.
Hold on, just one more on this, if I can.
Yep.
What do you make of the US response to this? They said that these trade barriers, in their words, were unscientific, that it's good that they've now been lifted. What did you make of that response from the US Agriculture Secretary?
Well, look, I'm not interested in their comments, but I think if they're talking about science, I think they'd probably back our statement that we'd want to see this peer reviewed and that an independent panel reviews it and make sure that it's done with science. We're not afraid of trade. We'll take on the US beef industry here in Australia. Our product's far superior. No problems at all. But we're not going to do it at any cost. We're going to make sure we get biosecurity settings right. And when the government can't do that, there's serious questions that need to be answered. So,
on net zero,
yep,
there's a
one
private members bill being tabled today to scrap that target. Does that undermine the process that Senator Carnarvon is leading, the process that Dan Teed is leading, and does it undermine your own leadership that this is once again an issue where the party is talking about itself and not focused on the people on the other side of the aisle?
I'm pretty relaxed about private members' bills. There's plenty. That's the entitlement of every member. And as a backbencher, you can do it at your will. So is that a bad thing, that we've got a democracy, that you come to this place and you put in a private members' bill? We've got a process that our party room has agreed to. We're going to stick to that. Individuals have every right. And I actually celebrate diversity of ideas and those that want to take up the parliamentary processes that are here. I have nothing to fear. I'm very comfortable in my own skin in terms of what I've achieved. I'll tell you what, over the last 3 years, let me tell you, who set the national agenda? Who was the first political party to say no to the voice? Who was the political party that finally got divestiture in coalition policy? Who was the political party that got nuclear energy as part of the coalition policy? Who was the party that stood up when those were going to be eroded and taken away from us to say we're out of the coalition? And who stood up to it and made the Liberal Party agree to those conditions? And who got an extra Treasury portfolio for the first time for the National Party? I think the Nats bat very highly above their weight. And when we negotiate, we mean it. And we'll keep doing that. And I'm comfortable in my own skin, and I'm comfortable in putting the faith in the party room. Individuals that are on the backbench have the right to go and be able to put private members' bills, but I lead a party room and I work on the collective and the majority of the collective. And the majority of the collective got it right, and the coalition, they got it right on nuclear, they got it right on the voice. I think our track record as a party room over the last 3 years is far superior to any other political party in this House whatsoever. Thanks for having us.
We've changed the orientation today, I've realised. This is... Is it? Oh, yeah. There you go. Actually, I look like I'm matching.